There's nothing like league. And this is the Betfred Super League. No! Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped my ear off. What do you think?
It's that time of the week again. 30 or so minutes on the way of the best rugby league chat around. Welcome along to this, the latest edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast, brought to you as always with the support of our friends at Betfred. Well, it'll be an even more magical edition of the podcast this week as we look back to the games played in Newcastle and the 2023 Magic Weekend. Was it the last or will there be more? We'll discuss in some detail. But first of all, there were some snippets of news coming out of St James's Park over this last weekend. The first is that the Super League salary cap for 2024 will be frozen at £2.1 million, but clubs will be allowed 3 marquee players moving forward, providing one of them is home-produced. Stevo, what do you think about all that?
Well, I think it's a good move in regards to the UK and, of course, Super League. But will it prevent the players wanting to go to Australia? I can understand what they're looking at to try to prevent, which we've done over many, many years, where the players want to try their hand out in Australia. But I think over the past few years, Eddie, is that quite a few of the players realise that it's a pretty tough competition to really hit the high spots. We've got them and we've had them over the past, but it's not as easy as what people think. It's not just like jump on a plane and you will be selected in the first team squad. It hasn't worked out that way for quite a lot of players.
Well, it hasn't. Oliver Gildart is the latest. He's on his way home after a troubled time in the NRL. Have we got it wrong, Stevo? But is the law for British players to try their luck down there, the weather, the lifestyle, the major draw cards as well? But it's, as you say, it's not as easy as they think. How many of them do come back with their tails well and truly between their legs? Quite a few.
Well, over the past sort of 10 years, I'd have to say that a few of them have struggled. But you can't blame them, Eddie. Look, as you say, forget about the sunshine. As I'm speaking, I'm looking out of my window now, and it's absolutely belting down.
We're in the middle of a heat wave here.
Yeah, I know. And it does really irritate me. But I can understand why they brought in this sort of situation, where you can have a third marquee player, because we want to try to keep as many players as possible in the UK. Not only just because they are star players, but we want youngsters to be able to look towards a future in our game of rugby league. We keep mentioning it. We've got to always remember what's underneath the iceberg. It's only the tip of the iceberg that we can see. And we've said it so many times, the Rugby Football League and Super League have to get it all sorted out and ensure that we have amateur clubs being supported. And I'm not so sure that they're being supported as well as they should be.
No, they're probably not. And when you think about it, marquee players generally are the players that come from the Southern Hemisphere up here to the UK. They come up on big money. It's their retirement fund, a lot of people say, and that's where a lot of the money goes. But now it's only 2 marquee players from abroad. One has to be homegrown. So I suppose that is a good tick in the box.
Yeah, it is. And congratulations on at least thinking towards the future. But we've also got to ensure that we've got that momentum. We've got that road that they can travel down. And quite a lot of the amateur clubs, they are struggling to keep going. And competition is strong. Rugby union, football, it's not easy to attract young children to come into the game.
Let's look at the Magic Weekend. 63,000 was the official figure that came to St James's Park in Newcastle to watch the 6 games, 12 teams over 2 days. Glorious weather up here, Stevo. Sorry to rub it in again. A marvellous occasion, some great matches. The venue really does bring out the best in the teams. Yet there's still no definite confirmation if it's to be on or off for next year. We've said it a few times over the past couple of weeks. Why on earth would they want to drop this?
Well, 63,000, that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong to say to IMG or all the clubs that we should keep it up. There's also talk about moving it away, moving it later in the year. Why do we want to move something like that later in the year that can confuse and perhaps be an interference in the run-up to the grand final?
Well, it was a good effort to get 63,000 there because, if I'm honest, little or no pre-event publicity. I mean, it was the weekend also of the FA Cup final, Man City, Man United, the Epsom Derby. We had a rail strike. I know they can't do anything about that. But why clash with one of the biggest football weekends in a football-mad city? I can't understand it. And has the Magic really caught on with non-rugby league fans? Because it's stayed at around about 60, 63, 65, 70,000 right away from day one.
Eddie, can you hear this? That's me knocking my head against the wall, thinking exactly what you've just said. What do these people want out of our game of rugby league? There's rumours going all over the place. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're going to make sure that they're sound financially, etc., and so forth. Anybody that's watching or a fan of rugby league will realise we're on the precipice because the finances are just not there. So we've got to be extremely careful how we try to assess, to back and have a good springboard to send our game into the future.
Well, as the dust was settling at Newcastle, Rodri Jones, our old pal, who is now the managing director of RL Commercial, he was interviewed on Sky Sports, and he says that the event this last weekend was a success. He can't deny that. It's the best attended Magic Weekend in 5 years. Now he says they will do an assessment around stakeholder feedback. It's not just about Super League clubs, but also about RL Commercial. And they have to assess the viability, he says, of the weekend. It's part of the calendar, so it's not being looked at as an individual event. IMG's recommendation is about creating a calendar that has peaks and flows. The positioning of the Challenge Cup, that's up for debate as well. The format of the Cup and dates of the Challenge Cup final, that all could change. So there's no definite answer about Magic yet, or about anything else, if it comes to that. Everything is still up in the air.
Well, air is perhaps the word, Eddie, because it was hot air, and he said nothing. Absolutely nothing. He just avoided the question, threw a few things here, there, and everywhere, and left everyone else confused. Now, to my way of thinking, that doesn't excite me at all. Well, maybe we might do this, and maybe it's not the end of the world, or etc. and so forth. 63,000 reasons. What's up with these people?
Well, Rodri's probably playing it with a dead bat. You know, we're on the verge of an Ashes cricket series. There's the analogy. He's playing it with a dead bat. He's trying to bat away the controversy, I suppose. The calendar, he says, and the new TV deal They're in discussions, listen to this, with multiple broadcasters. And those discussions should conclude in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe once that's sorted out, we'll know a bit more.
Well, let's hope so. But why has it taken so long? We brought in this IMG company to make sure that we're going in the right direction. And yet, we're halfway through the season, and they're still saying, and we're nearly there. And how many broadcasters are they saying? The ones that we have now, to my opinion, is they don't pay hardly any. They don't pay hardly any money to broadcast these other games.
You can't level that accusation at Sky. They pay the money.
No.
The rest of them jump on the back.
All I'm saying is that, deep down, if you really, really look at it, can you blame Sky TV saying, well, we're not going to give you as much as we did last year or the year before, etc. and so forth? Because they keep saying, oh, we've got multiple broadcasters. All right, we'll just sit back and see who they are and what are they paying.
Well, let's see. I mean, let's hope that the game is not left with deep pockets and short arms, if you know what I'm talking about. Now, the Magic weekend, moving forward, if it's going to continue, the Rugby League will have to be a little bit wary because the Rugby Union, and by the way, Ralph Rimmer is now one of the two people who's looking at the future of Rugby Union, the former RFL CEO, Ralph Rimmer. They're reported to be considering moving their Premiership Finals day away from Twickenham, and Newcastle and St James's Park is high on their wish list, apparently. And of course, the Premiership final is around about the same date as the same time as Magic. Unless they move quickly, they might lose Newcastle. Never mind, worrying about where they're going to take it. They might not have anywhere to take it the way things are going.
The Rugby Union now have realised they don't have to have the final at a posh palace called Twickenham. Different type of fans. They'll pack the stadium. So why wouldn't the Rugby Union be looking at saying, let's take it north? And plus the fact that it might spread and get a few more Rugby Union fans involved. And here we are, maybe thinking we'll get rid of it. Here you are, Rugby Union, you take it. Crackers.
Yes, it is a conundrum. Well, let's see what happens over the next 2 or 3 weeks, as Rodri has said. Right, let's take a look at the games that took place at the Magic Weekend this last weekend. It started on Saturday. Salford beating Hull Kingston Rovers 26-16. Wow, what a result this was for the Red Devils. Ryan Brierley, Mark Sneed, they led Rovers a merry dance, didn't they?
Did they ever? Brierley, it was unstoppable. Absolutely fantastic. And Salford are not going to be easy to push out when it comes to the playoffs. And they will be in the playoffs, no two doubt about that. The biggest shock to me, Eddie, was Catalan, 46-22 at Wigan. Wow.
I know. And Hull Kingston Rovers go to Catalan this weekend. And as a result of the opening game of the Magic, I think they've got some major injuries to overcome before that trip to Perpignan. You're right, Wigan, Catalan. What a win, 46-22. And the Catalan Dragons now top of the table. 8 tries they scored against Wigan. They ripped them apart defensively, didn't they?
Yeah, outrageously good. I like the setup down in the south of France. And my fear is that they will be snubbed by this new introduction of let's do this by IMG, etc. and so forth.
And Tom Johnson for the Dragons, 3 tries. Young Tom is in the form of his life, isn't he?
Oh, sensational. And I can assure you that there's a large country, a little bit right off India called Australia. They've noticed too. The Aussies are coming.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. Wigan rallied in the last 20 minutes, though, didn't they? I wonder whether the Dragons put the cue on the rack, to use one of yours. But Wigan face a huge test on Friday at St Helens. We'll come on to St Helens in a minute or two. But what a match on Friday night on Sky. Wigan Saints.
The pleasing thing for me was the way that Castleford beat Leeds 26-24. That was a great game. Absolutely great game.
Castleford winning for only the third time this year. A season-defining victory for them, I think.
Yeah, and Andy Last, you couldn't stop him turning and celebrating and clapping and hugging his co-coaches, etc. and so forth. It was great to see what our game's all about. You know, we are really fighting against relegation. And to see a coach show that emotion, it used to irritate me when we interviewed coaches and, this and that. Let's have a little bit of joy in our game. And listen, Andy Last brought it. Good on you.
And he was probably under a little bit of pressure, but they're now 6 points clear of Wakefield at the bottom. It was their second win of the year against Leeds. They've only scored 23 tries in the season so far before Magic. They got 5 on Saturday against the Leeds Rhinos. They're safe now, aren't they, surely?
You'd think so. I mean, I know I irritated quite a few people in regards saying that it would surprise me if Wakefield won one game the entire season. And it still looks that way. I know that they're trying to lift themselves and bring in other players. And that brings me to the problem of should we have relegation and promotion. The one thing about it, Eddie, is that if you're not relegated, it can give you the opportunity to then start and build up junior development, etc. and so forth, and build for the future and not panic buy to escape relegation. And that's what we've been doing in the UK for so many years. A team will say, right, they'll pay out. I mean, how many Australians have we found coming over halfway through the season just to avoid relegation? Now, to me, that's not advancing our game at all. Why don't we have 14 teams? Why don't we allow Wakefield, who have a brand new stadium, etc. and so forth, why don't we allow them to stay and let them give them a chance to build? Because Featherstone will have to do exactly the same thing.
Well, they will, and just as Lee have had to do this year, and we're going to talk about Lee and Wakefield right now, but just before we leave Leeds Castleford, Liam Watts of Castleford, he's got a one-match ban announced for dangerous contact in the game, and a little postscript about Leeds and Cass. Although Leeds, their top 6 hopes now look a little bit beyond them, what a great job they did with their playing kit, specially commissioned in memory of the great rugby union star Doddy Weir, a great pal, of course, of Rob Burrow, who sadly lost his life to MND earlier this year. Well done, Leeds, for that particular gesture. 37,000 were there on day one. Day two opened with Lee against Wakefield. Now, you talk about, letting Wakefield stay in the competition. Stevo, frankly, they were outclassed and they looked totally devoid of any idea, despite the fact that Lee were reduced to 12 men and then 11 men for 10 minutes when Tom Nisbet was sent to the sin bin. Ben Reynolds was given the red card. Wakefield just didn't look like they were ever going to score. They did in the end, but Lee were fantastic.
Yeah, and completely outplayed. And I understand that you're saying that they looked as though they had no idea. And it's another reason why we should allow them to try to develop and build for the future. It happens in Australia all the time, but they don't have that hanging over their head, is that you're going backwards. Look, we're trying to attract new fans to come and watch our game. And if Wakefield get relegated, then the crowds will probably go 50% less. So that won't give them the revenue to build again, etc. and so forth. So it's to me, it's just difficult for them to come back. Look, Wakefield used to be the glamour team way back in the the 60s and 70s. And it's just sad to see so many teams that are going backwards. And if IMG are right in what they say, they want it's not to do with the 2 points that you win or what position you are on the table. It's basically due to finance, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. And, you look at Lee and you contrast Lee and Wakefield. Wakefield could do with a Derek Beaumont. He opened his wallet. He spent something like £2 million on his team this year. Lachlan Lamb is an absolute star. So is the hooker as well. And did you see Derek? In his leopard skin tracksuit?
Yeah.
He looked fantastic, didn't he? I don't know whether it'll ever catch on, but he had a leopard skin tracksuit and he had leopard skin shoes.
We would love, wouldn't we, to have a Beaumont similar in every single club that has got the revenue to do that. Sadly, we don't have it. I mean, Wakefield have to just try to come back. And maybe they will try next season if they are relegated, if they stay with that. It could see the decline of the club to such an extent that they'll never get back to Super League.
I know it is a worry for them. And they've got David Fafita. They've obviously pushed the boat out there to get him back from Australia. He came on as a substitute in Newcastle and he drew a punch out of Ben Reynolds, which resulted in Reynolds getting the red card. But can Fafita, Stevo, can David Fafita, and for that matter, Luke Gale, who we've yet to see in Wakefield colours, can they really, really save them? It looks like a completely and utterly lost cause, doesn't it?
Eddie, there are 13 men on that field of play. 2 men can't change it. They can change a little bit of the direction. They can lift the spirits. They can do this, but the quality is not there. You've got to have a good look at what they've got. I know they've had a few injuries as well, which doesn't help. But why disband them? Why do we push them away and say, well, they're gone? And if you look in the lower divisions, there's quite a lot of clubs that really, they'll never, ever make it back.
But Lee have done it. Lee have come up and down and up and down. They've been the yo-yo club lately. They're 4th now, and they're on the way to the playoffs, Stevo.
Yeah, Eddie, but they've got a guy who's quite willing to put his hand in his pocket and spend it and get players to do that.
Yeah.
Right? The next thing that what they have to do is that the Leopards have to get everything organised to bring their talent through. Not just, we've bought these players, this is what we're doing, and they're doing exceptionally well. Underneath is what will count. Not just for this season. And I'm sure that Derek Bowman knows exactly, and the coaching system, that they've got to try to integrate and bring the youngsters through so that it's not just a 1 or 2 season wonder. It's a long-term situation. And there's not many people out there with deep pockets that can do that.
No, but Lee Leopards, they are bouncing at the moment. And so after the Magic Weekend are St. Helens. St. Helens 48, Huddersfield 6. St. Helens are coming good. 4 tries for Tommy Makinson, 28 points for him, a new Magic record. Saints look like they've put their indifferent start behind them, and they're going to be a force, aren't they, the second half of the season?
Oh, without a doubt. And as far as I'm concerned, I was never sort of worried about the fact that, some people were suggesting St. Helens might not make the playoffs. But they've hit their straps again. And they will be slowly, surely just pegging them off, all the other teams. They'll be there when it comes to the crunch.
No doubt about that whatsoever. Huddersfield led 6-0. Kevin Nagama, 3 grand final wins with St. Helens, man of the match in one of them. He got the first try. Huddersfield led 6-0. We thought, what's going to happen here to St. Helens? But as far as Huddersfield were concerned, that was about as good as it got. 4 St. Helens tries in the first 17 minutes of the second half. Game over.
Yeah, and I was pleased for Wellens because I think the new coach realised that the talent that they've got is on the 3-quarter line, out wide. Too many games I've watched this season, St. Helens have tried to be a little bit crunchy down the middle. They've tried to sort of take control, which I suppose in many ways is the best way for many coaches to say, if you take control in the forwards, then it will give the opportunity in the 3-quarters. But I think that the link over the last couple of weeks, it's been the link from the forwards to the 3-quarters that has been so successful. And they're going to be difficult to stop. You know, Makinson, it's not just the fact that he's scoring the tries. It's the people who are providing the half break and the pass, etc., out wide that gives him the opportunity. He was in sensational form. And Saints, it's the best performance they've had all year, apart from beating Penrith Panthers.
Absolutely. And the message now from the Totally Wicked Stadium is bring on Wigan on Friday. What a crunch that's going to be. What a match that will be.
Yeah, don't miss that. I mean, that is that's one of the games in the rugby league calendar that it should be a packed house.
Oh, it will be.
And I'm sure it will be. It'll be fantastic. Because Wigan, they'll be licking their wounds, to allow Catalan to score 46 points indicates to me that there's a few problems with injuries, but mainly a few problems in defence. A little bit out wide as well. I think they're a little bit weak in defensive patterns in and around the centre area. And Wigan have got to patch that up. They'll take him to the cleaners, Eddie, if they don't patch up that 3-quarter line in defence.
Indeed so. We all thought with Jay Field back and Bevan French operating as he can that everything would be all right for Wigan, but not so. So let's see what happens on Friday. The last game from the Magic Weekend, Warrington against Hull, a magical performance from Hull FC and Josh Griffin in particular, a hat-trick of tries for him. And Warrington 12-0 up after 13 minutes. Then they ship in 20 unanswered points before the Griffin hat-trick try and Tex Hoy's clincher. That sealed it. Hull looked really, really good, but they're probably not going to make the top 6, Stevo, Hull, are they, from where they are at the moment, unless they get a great run of form?
Well, they'll have to win at least 6 or 7 out of the remaining games, which is going to be difficult for them. But if you need a boost amongst the team and the club itself, I mean, to turn around 12 points, Warrington looked to me as though they were in total control. I don't think that they put the cue on the rack. You can't do that so early in the game. But you've got to admire the way that Hull played. It's, they did the opposite as what St. Helens did. They just went straight down the middle. And for some unknown reason, the Warrington Wolves defence was not good. I'm not taking anything away from the forwards hat trick, but they've got to sort their defence out as well. Warrington.
Are they falling from the perch? Do you think their lofty perch in 2023 so far? Do you think Warrington have got it in them to come back from this setback?
I do. Yes. I mean, there were high flyers at the start of the season. They were taking full control. They've got a good coach. They know exactly what they need to stay in front. I mean, when you look at the table, Catalan, Warrington, they're on 20. Wigan, Leeds, Salford, St. Helens and Hull KR, they're on 16 points. Now, a couple of wins either way and a couple of losses either way could see the complete change around. It was just one of those sort of weekends where a few of the shocks, who would have thought that Wigan, would really crumble. But Catalan played exceptionally well,
They did.
It's good for the game, don't get me wrong. But when you think that we've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, right, with only 4 points or 2 points away from the lead is Catalan. So it's wide open.
It absolutely is wide open. It was a magical, magical weekend. Everybody on the telly, everybody talking about it, the fans, the pundits, the commentators, they all said, please let this not be the last Magic Weekend. And that's been our mantra ever since we started looking forward to the Magic Weekend and at the start of this podcast this week. We don't want this Magic Weekend to go. It's a great, great event, isn't it?
Of course it is. And I'll tell you what, the pubs and clubs up in Newcastle, they don't want it to go either.
But I just wonder if that's the nub of the problem. The city that hosts it does brilliantly financially. The Super League clubs probably get very little out of it. And that's where they've got to turn the thing round.
Well, you say they get very little out of it, Eddie. A lot of people that would have gone to see the game in Newcastle, there would have been a percentage that I don't follow a team, I don't do this, that, and the other. But it can inject a lot of youngsters to come and see the game, people who have never seen it before. They say, oh, I love it, I get it. So in the long run, it might be an advantage to all the teams. But as we keep saying, 63,000 reasons, why not to get rid of it?
Indeed. We've mentioned Australia and the fact that Oliver Gildart is on his way home from the NRL. I just wonder if there's anything else going on, because as we said last week, we're in the middle now of the State of Origin series. What news have you got for us from all of that?
Well, the big news is that Nathan Cleary picked up a hamstring problem over the weekend. Quite a lot of the players that were involved on Wednesday in the State of Origin, they doubled up. Nathan Cleary picked up a bad hamstring. Well, he's out for at least 6 weeks, so he'll miss State of Origin 2 and 3. So it's going to be Fittler's job to try to find a new halfback pairing. A lot of people have been critical of Fittler not bringing on Nico Hines earlier than when he did.
Is it a must-win for Fittler and New South Wales?
Oh, yeah. Oh, listen, all the media, they've hung him out to dry. Not only that, James Tedesco, the captain in New South Wales, he had a shocker. But he didn't have a shocker at the weekend. He scored 2 tries, made 3 or 4 clean breaks. He was outstanding. And everybody's saying, how can Fittler drop this bloke? Not that Fittler has come out and said that he won't be selected. He'll be there, don't worry. And he was just outstanding. They interviewed him after the game. They beat the Bulldogs just field goal, 25-24. But Tedesco, 2 tries, as I said, he was outstanding. They interviewed him after the game, and Tedesco said, look, it was one of those days last Wednesday. I played awful, but I showed my quality today, and he did. And look, Fittler will pick him at full-back and remain as a captain. But there's a few problems in regards to finance. A little bit over here, Eddie. We often say that there's so much money down in Australia. St. George Dragons, who they're down at the bottom of the table. They sacked their coach a fortnight ago. They made a move for Jason Riles, an assistant coach, and they offered him $3.2 million deal to come and coach. He turned them down because the club would not allow him to be in charge and select his own support group. Now, how on earth can a club just say, well, we want you to coach, but you won't have control of who you want to work with?
Well, it's all about that, isn't it? It's all about who's behind you.
Of course it is.
And it's the team off the team.
And not only that, right? The Melbourne Storm said, well, if St. George don't want him, we'll have him. So he signed a deal with the Melbourne Storm. He's on his way down there. On top of that, the St. George Bank one of the biggest banks in Australia, have been supporting St. George Illawarra, the club, for 40 years. And they've announced only 2 days ago that they are stopping their sponsorship at the end of next season, which will probably mean around about well over $1 million will just go floating out of the club. It's not going to be easy for them to regain that sort of finance, from a bank that's been behind them for 40 years.
Well, it just shows you that there's all sorts of financial problems the world over. I'm sure that, of course, that doesn't affect you. You have no financial problems whatsoever down there, and you're enjoying the rain, I take it. You don't like the heat because you sweat a bit, don't you? I know that from bitter experience in the studio. So you'll be happy to be in the cool of Australia while we're enjoying this heat up here, yeah?
Do you know, it's the biggest load of rubbish that I've ever heard you come out with. But it may be the biggest load of rubbish, but what irritates me, you're right.
Yeah, I knew
You're
I
absolutely
was.
spot on.
I knew I was. Well, get the brolly out, keep warm, keep dry, don't get any more bronchitis and flu, and we'll catch up again in a week's time. How's that?
Sounds pretty good to me, unless I'm ill, because you put the mocker on me.
Talk to you next week.